Morning, everybody. I'm Andrew Tipping. I've been a strategy consultant for about 25 years now. And strategy consulting, of course, is all about understanding organizations' capabilities, their competitors, and so forth. But a critical part of the work and what gets us out of bed in the morning is also thinking about the future and developing ideas that are relevant not just for today, but for the future. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time in opening comments really weaving together what Matthias and Wolfgang have been saying. Matthias focusing on the customer, Wolfgang on the system and delivery and so forth, and I think the two things have to intimately intertwine. Whilst we're waiting for them though, really the topics I wanted to bring up firstly was, in common with some of my other speakers, the idea of to think about the future. It's always worth taking a step back and just thinking about where we've come from. And for me, the blend of retail and what it means for delivery and shipping really look back about a decade ago or so. A decade ago, physical retail and e-commerce were two nearly separate topics. If you had an immediate need for goods, you had an immediate need that needed satiating, virtually the only practical way of doing it was to physically go to a store, buy the goods and take it home. And e-commerce was built around distribution centers. An example on the slide, Amazon had 5 distribution centers a decade ago. So coast to coast, that little image on the right-hand side there, coast to coast, but many of those were more than a one-day transit lane away from you. And an e-commerce shopper was often willing to wait a day, sometimes for that free shipping concept, 2 days before the goods came. Completely different concept. Almost no mixing between the physical and the electronic, or very, very little. And certainly in the US phenomena, where laptops were and are prevalent, 60% of the e-commerce orders occurred after 6 p.m. at night. Which when you put that into your mind and think you made that order at 6 o'clock at night, a retailer has to pick, pack, a shipper has to come and collect it, bring it to your house. You had a handful of hours. You're 10, 11 o'clock at night. And many, many consumers don't want anyone knocking on their door at 11 o'clock at night, let alone someone they don't recognize. So the concept of delivery in short term to the e-commerce was very, very uncommon. And in fact, the last factor which was critical was the willingness to pay. A few years ago, we did a survey of typical transportation costs against typical willingness to pay, going right from these 1-hour delivery services up to multi-day. And in all cases, the customer willingness to pay is usually bigger than the transportation cost. So challenge, and in fact, in those days, there was, even a decade ago, there was many of the high dense areas, New York, Chicago, and so forth, had same-day services that failed about as quickly as they started. It really was, way before its time. So where have we got to now? We've got to ads that don't work, or I don't press the right button. Green, that's what I thought. Oh, it seems to be. I think we have a battery dying on us here. Oh, now I've gone too far. Any chance we can jump back one from the back of the room? Yeah, thank you. Now, retail stores are not only retail stores, but they're inventory stocking points for e-commerce. So much of the transit is incredibly short distance. I say short distance, but I think later on today, or even later this morning in this panel, we may point out it's actually bimodal. It's very, very shop at your local store, and then there's the exact opposite comment that I love German products or French products, and I want cross-border e-commerce. So instead of being those distances from distribution centers, there's now international cross-border e-commerce and local commerce as well. And the customers only really visit retail stores to interact with the good. If it's an experience good, you don't know it. That's the main reason for ending up at a store. Complete physical electronic blending. You can buy online, pick up at the store. You can buy online, have delivered. All of those have merged together. Final comment, customer willingness to pay is still not down at transportation costs, but a lot of models like crowdsourcing models, Uber Rush and so forth, are making, for sure in dense areas, and maybe in even slightly less dense areas, the idea of same day, multiple hour delivery, a viable concept. So that's where we are today. Wanted to move on to give a couple of comments on some retail survey studies we've done as to where that might take us in the future. Firstly, as you'd expect, the CEOs of most retailers are incredibly apprehensive about the rate of change at the moment and the rate of change of customer behaviors. Omni-channel shopping, understanding of their priorities and their preferences is a #1 foremost concern we found out in our most recent PwC CEO survey. Looking specifically at the retailers though, I think one of the things we really need to focus on when we're thinking of the future is global trends. Every single geography had different aspects that are incredibly relevant to the other geographies. So examples up here, one is China. If you look at their mobile chatting technique, WeChat has more users than there are people in the US. And the concept of WeChat is not only a communications medium, it's a communications medium loaded also with purchasing ability and payment ability. So their whole idea of mobile shopping, and you can see here on their Singles Day, 68% of online transactions came through mobile devices this year. And that's up from about 40% last year. That increase of going, not only e-commerce, but doing it through a smartphone or a tablet is going through the roof. Learning from one geography. Another more historical one, in Africa, the banking systems are nowhere near as advanced as other parts of the world. So the Apple Pay and the products we've had for a handful of years have been around in Kenya, for instance, M-Peso, since about 2007. And 90% of the population are willing to use smartphones for their payments. Not even smartphones, even manual flip phones can be used. So the idea of mobile wallets is one that's come up from another part of the world. Whereas here in the US, of course, we still have a lot of challenges to overcome in the sense people prefer using their PC to their phone. There's an awful lot of concern, 70% of users are concerned about cybersecurity and whether internet shopping is going to cause problems for their personal information and so forth. So a lot of hurdles to overcome, but there will be learnings from other parts of the globe. Going on, the fact we all would find fairly obvious, I think, it is the digital natives, the millenniums that are leading the mobile challenge. If you look at shopping daily, monthly, weekly, and add it together, 70 to 80% of millennials are undertaking mobile shopping. If you look at the 35 and over, that's a fraction of that. Less than 30% of people are doing mobile shopping at any point in time. So the millennials are definitely the people who are going to lead this challenge forward. And then two other comments I wanted to make sure I brought up. One was, given these two have merged now, what do people like about online shopping and what do they still like about physical shopping? And the online shopping is definitely convenience and price are the two factors that are the most important to them. I believe online shopping is much more open market and therefore you can find the most reasonable prices. And the convenience is just when you want it, where you want it. Physical shoppers, though, are still really focused on two topics that matter other than the blending one. Ease of checkout, you don't want to be sitting in the store for a long time. And also knowledge and deep knowledge of the sales associate. Because again, the physical shopping is really focused on the experience good. You've gone there to understand what you're buying and understand what it is and what it's like. So those are two factors. Interestingly, the other two about the ability to log on online is usually price comparison. I was speaking to a retailer recently who said, nobody ever reads the terms and conditions when they log onto our internet. And one of our terms and conditions is we're mining your data to find out who else you're looking for prices from. So they get an awful lot of information as you walk into the store and as you do your price comparison, the retailer is getting an awful lot of information that, about who else you consider their peers and who else you would consider shopping from other than them. So great tool for collecting information. Final point just to note is, especially in this world with so much uncertainty, so much variability, one critical factor that's been in place for a long time, and one of the stables that's still true, we have a few of them, is that recognized brands are very, very valuable to consumers. They understand the trusting and the reliability you get from a recognized brand is incredibly important. Those sort of companies have grown at 5 times the average rate of growth because of their trusted brand status. So that's the landscape we live in. And in my mind, anyway, we've now got a chance to have a panel. In my mind, there's a whole series of questions that always interest me, but I'm sure John will take us wherever the questions interest you. The typical things, when you talk about the complexity of this world we live in, almost all organizations, postal, logistics, otherwise, are already and will continue to have partnerships and need partnerships to deliver to their customers. What are those partnerships going to look like? How are they going to be crafted? We fundamentally believe they have to be crafted against different capabilities so you work together. How large will the cross-border e-commerce become? Talked about that earlier. That's certainly a complex part of the e-commerce world, an interesting one to look at. Matthias and Wolfgang were both asking the questions about automation. Sortation's almost completely automated already. Loading's getting there, but when's the on-the-road work going to be automated to the degree? I think Wolfgang's given us an idea already. 10 years, I think, was his stake in the ground before self-driving, so you may agree on that. What's crowdsourcing going to do to this same-day delivery market? Is it really going to take it out of the dense metro areas now to do other parts of the country? And then, of course, more of Matthias's world. When are some of these new radical ideas? The physical internet. There's a physical equivalent of everything that goes on the internet. Moving shipments, instead of caring about the package, you care about the container it's in. So it becomes the data flowing, not the physical. Blockchain technology is a way of getting trusted securities. You hand off things from party to party. Whole series of ideas that we may very be interested in diving into. But with that, I'll hand over to John, and the panel, I'm sure, will go on to questions. Yeah.